All right, so we're 1 minute in here. I'm going to wrap this up after 20, maybe 30 minutes, just because it's during the middle of the workday for most of us. Let's jump in. So welcome everyone to Hump Day Hangouts. Friendly reminder, this live event is being recorded and it is going out to the entire world. So whatever you're going to say is going to go out there. So if you have hesitations, maybe just wait and direct message me later. That's totally cool. The purpose of these Hangouts is really twofold. Number one, I want to empower you and everyone watching to learn how to learn LinkedIn. And then I want to get you excited to do that. So the rules are basically don't be a jerk. As long as you're not a jerk, we're going to have fun. I want this to be a safe place for everyone to learn. There are mostly no stupid questions. So, ready? The one thing that I did want to, the one topic I definitely want to spend some time talking about today is company pages. And so I want to make that a priority. But since I also like having you guys on here live, does anyone have any questions that we can hit? You guys who are here today, you can unmute if you want to and ask. It's totally fine.
The one thing I had in mind other than pages, which I think is a great topic, would be messaging. So message sequencing and things like that, yeah.
So, right. And did you message me about making your messaging, Matt?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So can you be a little bit more specific on there? What's on your mind? What's giving you difficulty?
Oh, just, having enough conversations to actually map a typical conversation. I haven't had a typical conversation yet.
Sure.
Let me put it this way.
Sure.
They're all different. So.
Yeah. And that's kind of normal. So I think what I usually do, and it kind of changes, it'll always evolve, but a good rule of thumb, and I know that you know this, but I'll just add a couple points too. A good rule of thumb is to do a best guess and map it out. And the real reason you do that is to save you time, because you'll sit there and you go, oh my gosh, what should I say? And you do it over and over and over again, and just forcing yourself to map out, I'll say this is their probable objections, and then do your best to guess what that's going to be. It's going to be wrong sometimes, and then you're going to have to change it sometimes, but just map it out. It's really just as an assist. It's always going to evolve, and you're going to, maybe like your version 3 is going to look so different. It's just totally different. But what I do with my team is, since there's revisions, I like to use, when it comes time to actually copy pasting, and if there's collaboration involved, or if you just want to do revisions, I like Google Docs, because then I'll just do one tab open Google Docs, and the Google Doc kind of reflects what we've mapped out in like a mind node kind of thing. And then, you might do like two variations, and it just tends to be easier to copy paste, to have that Google Doc open in one tab to move back and forth. But the actual conversation, I think that you'll do great. I mean, just have them, change them, and don't be shy. You're such a polite guy, Oob. just go forward and take notes as you go and make changes.
Okay, well, that's exactly what I'm doing. So no surprises there. I just suspect it's going to take a few, a few of them, probably 10, 20, 30 more.
Oh yeah.
To actually not finalize, but get something that actually is usable for future conversations. So
for sure. And as an expectation, and I know we talked about this before in the past too, there's a point where you're doing research and discovery, where you're just trying to figure it out. And so if that's where you're at, and that's totally okay. If you're at the point in time where you're doing research and discovery, just have the expectation that you're not acing it on the first try, you're figuring it out. Yeah, for sure. And it's a lot easier and time effective to figure it out when you're on messaging than driving to a networking meeting and being there in person.
For sure.
Yeah. Anything else?
Nope. No, that's pretty good.
Cool.
Hey, I actually have a quick statement that might help a little.
For sure. So everybody knows, Jesse is an amazing copywriter. So if he's giving advice on copywriting, you need to listen to him.
How do you say your name real quick? Is it Oob?
Oob.
So what kind of service are you providing?
So it's basically lead generation for a subsegment of the insurance industry.
One thing you could do then, and this works really well for service providers like yourself, is offer a free audit, like a 30 or 45-minute audit of what they're doing currently in exchange for answering questions. So you'd like detail a list of 10 to 15 survey style questions. You do the audit with them, and at the end, you wouldn't actually stop like the call. You would just go, okay, hey, now that we've covered this, can I ask you my questions? And you can use those questions to build out your messaging structure and actually have voice of customer data research into it. And you've created a lot of social proof with them before you've even got into it. So they're really willing to give you really honest advice and feedback.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Jer, is that similar to what you guys were doing?
Yeah, we're establishing some common ground that we have to talk about and engage as fast as possible in the conversation. That's our objective always. And from there on, you can derive what will work the best for you. So it's really exploratory, search what will work.
Yeah. And then you can reward them by giving you feedback. Right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So they're helping you, but you just kind of spin it so that even though they helped you, you're,
Yeah, basically they're your consultants, but then they are free.
Exactly. It's like doing a podcast with famous people and getting free advice.
Yes, correct.
Cool. All right. So Josh Godsey jumped on. I don't know why his camera's off. Josh is a really awesome guy. If you're working from home, don't be shy. All right. So we're gonna jump in on company pages. Josh, do you want to? The reason why I'm highlighting Josh is he asked me, I think 2 weeks ago, about company pages. We didn't have time for it last week. Did you want to elaborate a little bit on that, Josh, or should I just take the reins and go?
Can you hear me okay, Isaac?
Yes.
Hey, I'm actually about to walk into another meeting, so I was just going to listen into to you guys while I was in this other meeting. Unfortunately, I can't really participate too much, but so I'm just being a fly on the wall today.
All right, cool. Well, I'll just let you get back to your meeting and send you the recording.
Perfect.
All right, cool. So let's do this. I'm going to share my screen here. All right. Can you guys see that all right?
Yep, all good.
All right, cool. Let me just do a couple just off the cuff thoughts with company page. It becomes really critical when I'm creeping on profiles. So what happens is I'll open someone's profile. From what they have written, I go, yeah, I probably want to talk to them. I want to make sure. And what I always end up doing is I open their company page and then I go to their website, because sometimes there's a discrepancy between their company page and the website. Usually it's pretty similar, but just to make sure. So for all of us, when we're talking about strategies for company pages, so we just go here to company. Can you raise your hand? Who has access to a company page? I know Josh does, Dave does. Jared, do you have a company page? Yep. Okay. Let's see. Lorraine, not sure. Okay, cool. So, when you're dating someone and then you have to have that DTR conversation, the define the relationship, it's kind of like that with company pages. You have to, instead of DTR, you have to DTG. You have to define the goals. And depending on how old your company is, what you do, depending on, just where you're at, how many employees you have, those goals can really change dramatically. But usually company page goals with whatever you're doing falls into like 2 or 3 categories. If you're larger, smaller too, but especially larger companies will use their company page for hiring. So you can pay for a job post, which is all right, or you can do a post and say you're hiring. So if you have a large following, that can be a great way for free exposure for hiring. So job post is one category. The other category would be brand awareness, right? So more top of mind, just awareness. And then the third category is going to be, I want money, so closed deals. So all of your activity usually falls into the goal, those three goals, either awareness, money in the bank, or hires, right? So there's gonna be some variations, but those are usually the things. So when you're on a company page, I feel like as an individual user, when I can just like, it's like I'm really mobile. I can go to home, I can go to my network, I can go through jobs, I can message people privately, I can do so many things. It's like I can go anywhere that I want. When if I'm a company page, I can really just do this. And so the big, I can, you know, I can post a job, but really your actionable stuff starts right here. Do a post, right? So whatever you're going to do, it's kind of going to be relying on what happens in the news feed. Cool? You guys tracking? Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do is, before I go into that, I'm going to go up to admin tool. So if you're an admin, you can add people to your page as an admin. You can change your public URL, just like you can change your vanity URL or your public URL for your personal profile. You could extend your reach. These two are paid. So you could, this is like boosting a post on Facebook, sponsor update. You can post a job. That's something you have to pay for, at least in the past. It'd be awesome if there's a free one. Post a job is paid. A showcase page, a lot of people are not familiar with the showcase page. Adobe is a great example for LinkedIn's intentions for a showcase page. A showcase page is for a specific segment of your brand's audience. And Adobe is a great example because they have products like Premiere, which is video editing. They have Photoshop, which is photo editing. And they've got all kinds of other things as well. And Adobe is just so big, and those products are so diverse, and each one has their own audience that it makes sense for them to create a showcase page under the umbrella of Adobe. So depending on what you do, if you do you own the company, or you could probably even fudge it if you're like what's the word I'm looking for, like a franchise, or if you're on your own but part of a larger company, like if you're selling insurance or that kind of thing, you could say on your profile that you work for a big company, or you could create your own company. You need a URL to be able to verify that page, but then you can create a showcase page for whatever your specialties are. So like you might do a showcase page for each one of your for your market, right?
Correct.
Would that make sense for what you're doing?
It sounds like it may actually. I'm going to look into that.
Yeah, because sometimes the offerings are so different that it just makes sense to split them up a little bit. You can't cover everything on one page necessarily.
In this case, more than the offer, it's going to be the language really that's going to differ. Like that, some of those markets are so specific, they really need languaging adaptation so that they can really recognize themselves in whatever is written. So yeah, I definitely am going to look into that.
For sure. You've got this is really this last line here. This is kind of where it ends. Help center, the terms, feedback, shut it down, that kind of thing. You could go over here to analytics. It's pretty basic. Since last year though, this has gotten a lot more bells and whistles. Still pretty basic. Visitors, updates, your followers, your activity, content suggestions is new. The content suggestions, this is, you know, one of the main tabs up here. I think long term, LinkedIn's goal for companies is probably going to follow the pattern of what Facebook has done, where it's, do you remember, I think it was last year, and I'm not a Facebook expert, but I think it was sometime last year when LinkedIn overnight changed the algorithm so company pages started getting less exposure. Do you remember that? A bunch of people were frustrated because their organic reach went down and then the only options paid. So I think LinkedIn will follow the same kind of pattern. It's just a good business model with company pages and sharing content. So if you go here, they're really encouraging you to share content. You have to do it well. Should be good content. Maybe you tag someone, maybe start a conversation, but content is the primary activity, call to action that LinkedIn's gonna give you for a company page. So you can do your own thing, or you can do content suggestions. And what they're doing with content suggestions is they're saying they're like watching material that everybody engages with. And so they're saying, all right, this is your page, we know what your page is about. Choose an industry, choose a location. Let's do KC for fun. And let's see, seniority. Well, let's do job function, actually. Let's do business development. So what have people in business development, in marketing, in KC been interested in? This kind of stuff. What about people that are doing sales? What have they been interested in? No content found. Maybe we'll just do US just for better examples. Sales. And what you can do is just go share. And it's kind of like an assist. Because creating content can be a pain in the butt. And so LinkedIn's going to give you an assist, hoping that this is actually bringing value to the people that you've selected here. So this can be a really good assist. That's about it. If you're going to be sharing your own content here, the same kind of rules seem like they apply for sharing content on a personal account versus a company account. You know, try not to link off of LinkedIn. If you're going to do a video, upload the video to LinkedIn, treat LinkedIn like its own host, tag people to make it go farther. If you tag someone, you might not be aware of this. If a company page tags somebody, depending on their email notifications, they actually get an email sent to them. It looks nice. It says, hey, this company mentioned you in a post. So if you do that, it can capture people's attention. And the goal there really is you want to elicit interaction. More than just a like or a share, you want comments, right? So with a company page, if your main goals are going to be hiring, brand awareness, or leads, and your main activity is going to be kind of relegated to sharing a post, if your goal is hiring, the freebie way to do hiring is to share a post and say, hey, we're hiring, message this person or email this person. Maybe leave the link out. And you can tag them. If you tag that person, it tends to go farther. I heard this on a LinkedIn, one of the business videos that they did. A company page, this is really good to remember. A company page usually has about 10 times less followers than their employees. So if you work for like Barnes and Noble and your employees tend to have 500 connections, you're going to have about 10% of that usually. That's just the normal. So it takes a lot of work for a company to build followers. Cool. And as a company grows larger and larger, it's like they can leverage sharing. It's like it becomes a bigger asset because having your employees share your posts, because you usually have few followers as a company, having your employees share the posts as standard practice makes it go so much farther. Sorry, that was a little bit jumbled. So let me just summarize. So company pages have about 10% of the followers as their employees. So if you want your post to go farther, have your employees share your company posts, right? Or tag people. It's going to make it go a lot farther. So if you're doing a job post it, maybe tag your HR guy, tag yourself, whatever. It's going to go a lot farther. or you'll just have to pay. If your goal is getting leads, you're going to either get leads on the LinkedIn platform, like through a lead form that's going to be paid, or you're going to try and drive traffic off of LinkedIn to your website to do something like convert for a contact form, or maybe have like an opt-in or a content upgrade, that kind of thing. But LinkedIn, they don't like people leaving LinkedIn. So if you link to your website, it tends to get less traction. So just for what it's worth, good practice right now tends to be mention, like write the content, don't link off-site in the post, put the link in the comment. That tends to perform a little bit better, at least today. Could change tomorrow. It's an algorithm. If it's for the leads, if you can tag someone, always goes farther. It might look a little cheesy if you keep tagging yourself, but tag people if possible. You can get all creative with that kind of thing. If your goal is brand awareness, I think that's one of the more common things that I see as far as the strategies is companies just sharing initiatives that they're doing, events, whatever. It's for brand awareness in hopes that eventually those really top of funnel people will move down the funnel. And you can be a little bit more loosey-goosey with what you're doing because it's just for brand awareness. And you might maybe skirt on the edge of something political or whatever, just to drum up activity for brand awareness. But brand awareness, you have to really pursue brand awareness to turn it into B2B money in the bank, right? And actually, Grant, he's not here today. Grant sent me a YouTube video with some really good best practices for sharing content on a personal page. You can apply the same thing on a company page. I'll actually put that here in the chat. If I forget, just remind me here in a little bit. But he made a great point in there where it's sharing content is fantastic. It's great for brand awareness. It's top of funnel. It might go viral, but turning that activity in the newsfeed into money in the bank there are steps involved. And usually the steps involved go from newsfeed off LinkedIn to your website, to your funnel, or they go from newsfeed to direct messaging to that conversation, and then whatever your call to action is there. So keep in mind, just for expectations, if your goals are hiring or leads, usually the conversation is going to have to leave LinkedIn, period. Any thoughts or comments here? We've got about 5 minutes left, so I'd love you guys' feedback and just different perspectives on company pages too.
Question I've got.
Go ahead, Dave.
Isaac, just in terms of sponsoring a post, because it sounds like, well, it already is somewhat Facebook-like in the sense that even if you have fewer followers, your post there is not going to reach as many people as if you have 500 connections on your personal profile. Naturally, it won't. So can you sponsor posts from the personal profile, or is it only posts from the page, from the company page?
I believe it is only company, but I'm not a paid pro.
Okay.
Paid isn't so much my wheelhouse. I'm not aware of there being any way to pay to boost a personal post. It has to be company.
Okay.
And one thing that makes me nervous about putting all my eggs in sharing content is you're just putting everything in the hands of an algorithm, which I don't like, because tomorrow the algorithm could change. And if you've been relying on your sales, your money in the bank, because of a workaround in an algorithm or whatever, that's just a really weak, vulnerable is probably a better way to say it. It's a vulnerable place to be. So do it. If you want to try and sponsor posts, do it. But just as a word of, I guess it's my own, maybe I'm just too conservative. I don't want to put my 401k in the hands of an algorithm.
A quick thing too, if you guys don't mind.
Sure.
I don't see paid as bad. The issue you run into a lot, and they kind of talked about it a second ago, is where if you don't own your list, at any
Yep.
point they can cut you off from it, right? And so it's like they said with Facebook, like all of a sudden, like, hey, I've got 100,000 followers and they don't see my updates unless I pay for them. So do you really have 100,000 followers?
For sure. That's a great point,
So
Jesse.
that's always something to consider. Like always be driving them to some kind of email list. And of course, like that's only still useful too. Don't get caught up in having a big list. There's so much list decay that it doesn't really matter in the long run, but that is something to consider.
Yep, for sure. And I mean, when I'm going through the newsfeed and I see company updates, usually I don't care because I feel like it's something that's just shared because the company's been told that they should share something. It's like I'm like, why did you even say this? There's probably somebody out there that appreciates what they shared, but for the most part, I'm like, eh. When I care is when I have had contact with the company and I like them, I respect them. Maybe I know the owner or somebody that works there. That's when I stop and I'll give it a minute, you know. And yeah, paid is not a bad route to go. What AJ Wilcox, who's really great at paid, you can check him out. What he usually says is if you're going to do paid on LinkedIn, your starting cost should be about 15,000. If what you're selling is less than $15,000, steer away from paid on LinkedIn. They're unashamedly expensive. So if you're a small business owner, most likely doing paid from a brand new company page, it probably won't give you a very high ROI. You, there's going to be exceptions to that, but in general, uh, I'd probably steer away from it unless what you're selling is really expensive. You've got a fantastic presence, and your close rate's going to be killer. Sorry, Dave, we kind of went dovetailed there. Did we? Any more thoughts?
I think I'm kind of just trying to think like how this would apply to me. I think one of the challenges for someone like me, who's basically, for lack of a better description, a company of one, is it's kind of funny to have your profile and then your company page when you are the company. It's not like I'm
Mhm.
Apple with a bunch of employees. So
Right.
I can see applications for, say, like my new accessibility service we've talked about, where I might want to do a sponsored post on the company page. But for the most part, I feel like I would want, for my type of business, I would want the personal connection of my larger connection list on the personal profile in general. Um, Unless you see something I'm missing.
For someone in your shoes with a small company, this is why I said earlier that the company page becomes more of a valuable asset as the company grows. Because there's just a lot of, it's like if you want to know something about HR and you need to check out the company, if you're a company of 5 or less, that's just not going to happen. Like if I'm wanting to know about job posts and you're a company of 3 or 5, people just won't do that if you're a super tiny company. But as you're a larger company, it becomes a necessity for human resources, for hiring, for PR. So the company page becomes a more valuable asset as the company grows. When you are smaller, I agree with what you just said. I would lean on sharing personally, but I also would not neglect sharing on the company page because of what we talked about in the very beginning. When you are like when someone's creeping on Dave's or Josh's or Rob's profile and they click through to the company page, it's nice for them to see that there's activity there, and then they'll maybe go through to the website. So it's not even necessarily for post reach. It can also be for trust related to your personal actions, personal outreach.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like when someone goes to your blog and the last post was 5 years ago. You go, are they really still doing this? Same kind of thing. All right, we're 1 minute past 30 minutes. Any final thoughts on company pages? Jer, so Jer's in the Netherlands. I would appreciate if you do you have any view on company pages, just
Yeah.
different culture.
Yeah, it's basically the same all around the world. I work with a company that does advertising on LinkedIn also, and what they see is that when they tend to set up a campaign, the first reaction comes after 3 months. And the company pages doesn't get as much traction as a person does. So if you want to have faster traction and more conversations, stick to your own LinkedIn profile. But like you just said, having a company page is mandatory. Just having a website, just like having a website is mandatory, just like having business cards are mandatory. It's something that people will check out to see if you're valid, and they can see if you're up to speed with what they're thinking about you. So when you're arranging your company page, put it up like it's a landing page that is building upon your personal profile and building upon your website. And if you want to advertise, you can do that, but you have to have a big wallet.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. Great point also on that it's mandatory. What I'm finding more and more to be common is to start in search in SalesNav with account-based searches. So this is if you're, and we talked about this when we hung out last too. So there's lead results, which is an individual search, but there's also account searches. And what account search is going to do is going to search for companies. And if a company page does not exist, it is not an account-based search result. So even with that, for inbound things, if the company page isn't set up, if the company page isn't optimized, it will not appear in account-based search, and then you'll be left out. Now, granted, if someone's going to be doing account-based searches, they're probably going to want to sell you something, but for what it's worth, you won't be in account-based search if you don't have a company page. All right. Any other final thoughts here on company pages? All right. Guys, thank you for your time. Hope to see you all next week, and y'all are great.
Have a great day, all.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.